Hello everyone, welcome to another one of our Odinism videos. Today we're going to be comparing the Alfather to Yahweh, the two main and primary gods of both Christianity and Odinism. Now when people use the term God, they usually mean one of two things. They're either referring to the greatest possible being, or they're simply a being with power. And while the gods and goddesses of the Eddas do claim to have power, one stands out above the others. The title of Allfather is clarified for us in Gylfaginning as follows. In verse 9, There dwelt the gods in their race, and hence were wrought many tidings and adventures, both on earth and in the sky. In Asgard is a place called Hildskav, wherein Odin seated himself there in the high seat he saw over the whole world, and that what every man was doing, and he knew all things that he saw. His wife hight Frigg, and she was the daughter of Forgiven. And from their offspring were descended the race that we call Azir, who inhabited Asgard, the old, and the realms that lie about it, and all the race are known to be gods. For this reason Odin is called Allfather, that he is the father of all gods and men. And of all things that were made by him and by his might, Jord, the earth, was his daughter and his wife, and with her he begat his first son, that is, Thor. To him was given force and strength, whereby he conquers all things quick. Now with this language given to us by Snorri Sturluson, the earliest credible source in everything we know about Odinism historically, there's a remarkable amount of power, authority, and responsibility that goes with that title. Verse 3 of the poem clarifies, after giving us the 12 names of Odin has gone by, Ganglir asks again, where is this god? What can he do? What mighty works has he accomplished? Answered Har, he lives from everlasting to everlasting. He rules over all his realm, and governs all things, great and small. Then remarked Jafar, he made heaven and earth, the air, and all things in them. Thirdi added, what is most important, he made man and gave him a spirit which shall live and never perish, though the body may turn to dust or burn to ashes. All who live a life of virtue shall dwell with him in Giml and Vingolf. The wicked, on the other hand, shall go to hell, and from her to Nilfhel, that is, down to the ninth world. Then asked Ganglir, what was he doing before heaven and earth were made? Har gave answer, then he was with the frost giants. So the Allfather Odin is given credit for the following things. He is called eternal. He has existed from everlasting to everlasting. Omnipotent. He rules and governs all things, great and small. Creator. He made heaven and earth, the air, and all things in them. The giver of life. He made man and gave him a spirit. And the final judge. All who live a life of virtue shall dwell with him. Now, separately and quite significantly, it's also noted that he existed with the frost giants before the universe was made. That will be important later. Now, when the Christian uses the term God, they mean one thing specifically. They're referring to Yahweh. The Tetragrammaton renders this YHVH because Yahweh was pronounced without vowels. Some say it's Yehovah, others in Germanic translations pronounce it Jehovah, but Hebrew doesn't have a Jah sound, so it is just generally referred to as Yahweh, the true and living God of Israel. He also is credited for the very same thing that Odin is credited for in the Old Testament. He is called eternal, existed from everlasting to everlasting, in Psalm 90 and verses 1 through 2. Lord, you have been our dwelling place in all generations, before the mountains were brought forth, or ever you had formed the earth and the world. Even from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. He is called omnipotent. He rules and governs all things, great and small. Isaiah 48:28, have you not known, have you not heard? The everlasting God, the Lord, the creator of the ends of the earth, neither faints nor is weary. His understanding is unsearchable. He is called the Creator. He made heaven and earth, the air, and all things in them, where it notes in Genesis 1:1, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. He is called the Giver of life, in that he made man and gave him a spirit. In Genesis 2:7, the Lord God formed man from the dust of the ground, breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living being. And finally, he is credited to be the final judge. All who live a life of virtue shall dwell with him. Daniel 12:2. And many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. Now, when comparing these two side by side, they almost sound like the exact same person, apart from having wives and so forth, at least when it comes to the kind of being worthy of the title of Allfather. And with that in mind, a dilemma surfaces on the part of the God of the Old Testament. He's not only claimed the same things for himself that are attributed to Odin in the Eddas, but also made another claim. In Isaiah 43 and verse 10, the God of Israel says, "Before me there was no God formed, nor will there be ever after me, nor there will be after me." When there are two greatest possible beings, there is a dilemma, much like when there are two first place runners. When they both got first place, it means that they tied, and if both runners tied, they're both losers. Unless, of course, the second runner that got first place never qualified for the race in the first place. Having an absolute authority for morality is vital for any coherent religion, and having an absolute authority for morality that actually meets its own standards is equally important. So, to test this, we'll hold them both to their own standards and see which doesn't end up disqualifying themselves, rather, as worthy of the title of Allfather. So, starting with Odin. What was meant when Odin is called the same things that Yahweh is? Well, let's look to the Eddas for clarification. Is Odin actually eternal? According to the same source as Gylfaginning, the Eddas actually clarifies that Odin was not eternal. He had a beginning through Bur, one of the offspring of the frost giant Ymir, and to add this, you also have an end at Ragnarok at the hands of Fenrir, son of Loki. In Vafthrûdnismál 52-53 we read, "What shall bring the doom of death to Odin, when the gods to destruction go? Vafthrûdnir spake, the wolf shall fell, the father of men, and this shall Vithar avenge. The terrible jaws shall he tear apart, and so the wolf he shall slay." So instead of Odin being eternal, we actually have a contradiction in the Eddas. Odin is claimed to have existed from everlasting to everlasting, but it's revealed in the first 4 books to have been created and will have an end. Is Odin actually omnipotent? Well, going back to the previous point, Odin's strength not only has a limit that Fenrir will surpass, but his dominion and authority will also have a limit whether or not his ravens, Hugin, which means thought, and Munin, which means memory, will return to him, a matter over which he is anxious. And on top of this, we also get an insight into Odin's dietary needs as well. In Grimnismál, verses 19-20, Freki and Gerai does Herfather feed, the far-famed fighter of old, but on wine alone does the weapon-decked god Odin forever live. Or Mithgarth Hugin and Munin eat both each day he set forth to fly. For Hugin I fear lest he come not home, but for Munin my care is more. Now, why would an all-powerful being have a need for anything like wine? Likewise, let alone consider the whims of his ravens beyond his control. You aren't anxious for something you are certain of. Seems like he gave up that eye for nothing. Third, is Odin actually the creator? While Odin did assemble the earth from pre-existing matter, i.e. the corpse of Ymir, the creation of Ymir was not the work of Odin. The origin of the universe is actually the result of the realm of fire and the realm of cold meeting and creating Ymir from nothing. Before him was called Luingagap, or the Yawning Gap. We read in Voluspo, verses 3-4, "Of old was the age when Ymir lived. Sea nor cool waves nor sand were there. Earth had not been, nor heaven above, but a yawning gap, and grass nowhere. Then Bur's sons lifted the level land. Mithgarth the mighty there they made. The sun from the south warmed the stones of the earth, and green was the ground with growing leeks." Now, Odin may have built the Lego set that we're living on today, according to the Eddas, but he didn't make the material, so who really gets credit for bringing this universe into existence? It just kind of happened. Fourth, is Odin actually the giver of life? Unfortunately, no. specifically for human beings, Odin alone can't claim this for himself, since Vili and Vi and he were the ones who created Ask and Ambla from two trees they saw on the beach. This is according to Gylfaginning 1:9. Is Odin actually the final judge? Well, once again, going back to Gylfaginning, we actually see this is the responsibility divided between him and another. Gylfaginning 1:24. Volkvang it is called, and there rules Freya. For the seats in the hall, half of the slain she chooses each day. The other half is Odin's. So who's the final judge? This necessary attribute of divinity is unfortunately lacking from someone trying to be claiming to be the Allfather, and he's failed in every single department. Not according to me, not according to the Bible, but according to the Eddas itself. So then moving on to the Bible, what is actually meant when Yahweh is called the same things as Odin? And for this we will turn to the New Testament to see what God is like when he visited this world. Is Yahweh actually eternal? Indeed, and he's the only one who can claim that. In John 1:1 it notes, "In the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God, and the Word was God." Jesus further details in quoting Exodus 3:14, when God introduced himself to Moses, he used that name for himself. Before Abraham was, I am. So he has always existed. He didn't say I am, but then I just said that, therefore I was. He's the only all and completely existent being. Is God, Yahweh, actually omnipotent? Indeed he is, and he's the only one who can claim that. In Ephesians 4 and verse 6, Paul notes, "There is one God and Father of all, who is above all, and through all, and in you all." Is Yahweh actually the Creator? Indeed he is, and the only one who can claim that. John 1:3, "All things were made through him, and without him nothing was made that was made." Is Yahweh actually the giver of life? Indeed he is, and the only one who can claim that. In John 11:25-26, Jesus said to her, referring to Martha, "I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, though he may die, he shall live. And whoever lives and believes in me shall never die." Do you believe this? I say that as well to you listening. And finally, is Yahweh the final judge? Indeed he is, and the only one who can claim that. In Acts 17:30-31, Paul speaking says, "Truly these times of ignorance God overlooked, but now commands all men everywhere to repent, because he has appointed a day in which he will judge the world." Note, he will judge the world in righteousness by the man whom he has ordained. He has given assurance of this by raising him from the dead. So it wasn't just another man, it was he himself coming as a man. And on that note, I affirm and reiterate that reality to all of you. Not only does Odin fail every single standard that he could be held to, being worthy of the title of Allfather, the God of the Bible passes them all with flying colors. If you're looking for a religion based on history, I cannot recommend Odinism. But if you're looking for a God worth following, I recommend Jesus Christ. Thank you for your time, everyone, and I look forward to the next time that we can talk about this again. God bless you.